The smell of burnt coffee clung to the break room that morning, the kind that sat too long on the hot plate. I remember thinking it was fitting, stale, bitter, and overstayed. The HR director's voice came from somewhere beyond the glass wall, muffled, calling my name. Everyone knew what it meant. Downsizing season had arrived, and this time my number was taped to the door. 15 years I'd walked these halls. 15 years of early flights, endless conference calls, and spreadsheets so complicated they could double as encryption. My badge still hung warm against my chest when she slid the envelope across the table. Severance package. Nothing personal. I smiled at the irony. I didn't drive straight home. I took the long way, letting the city roll past, warehouses, truck depots, the smell of diesel hanging in the air. Logistics was in my blood. I'd been moving things from point A to point B since I was old enough to ride in my dad's pickup. Now, for the first time in my adult life, I had no destination. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I'd made a decision. No polishing my resume. No groveling for another corner office. I was going to build something of my own. I could see it already. A consulting firm that cut through the corporate sludge and delivered real solutions. Sarah was on the couch, legs tucked under her, phone in hand. She looked up when I walked in, the corners of her mouth twitching in that half-smile she wore when she was waiting for the punchline. "You're home early," she said. "I'm done," I told her. 15 years. They're downsizing. I'm starting my own shop. For a moment, her face softened, like she was going to step forward and hug me. But the softness blinked away. "Okay, but you'll find another real job too, right?" I brushed it off. She didn't mean anything by it, I told myself. Not yet. The next weeks were a blur of ambition and cheap coffee. I cleared out the spare bedroom, set up a desk, a second-hand printer, and a whiteboard I found on clearance. I worked 16-hour days mapping out services, chasing contacts, cold emailing leads. I was exhausted but alive in a way I hadn't been in years. Sarah smiled at first. Then the questions started. "How's your little project? Any real clients yet?" She said it with a laugh, but it stuck under my skin. I told myself she was nervous. The dinners out were fewer now, the weekends away non-existent. Still, I pushed forward. I believed in what I was building. What I didn't realize, not yet, was that Sarah had already stopped believing in me. She was just waiting for the right moment to make it clear. And that moment would arrive, on a warm summer afternoon, with the smell of barbecue smoke curling into the air. The first real crack didn't come in a fight. It came in a smirk. One evening, I was hunched over the desk in my new office, which was really just the spare room stripped down to its bones. The sun had gone, the only light spilling from the desk lamp, turning my notes and invoices into a mess of shadows. Sarah leaned against the doorframe, scrolling her phone. "You've been in here all day," she said. "You should get some fresh air. Or maybe start looking for, something stable." She said it like she was offering friendly advice, but her eyes didn't match her tone. They had that look, the one you give someone chasing a dream you've already decided will fail. At first, I tried to meet her halfway. I'd take her out for dinner once a week, even if it meant eating into my savings. I'd pretend to laugh when she called my business the side hustle, in front of her friends. I told myself she just didn't understand yet. But little things started piling up. She stopped asking about my work, unless it was to make a joke. When bills came in, she'd set them on my desk without a word, even though she'd never paid a single one in the 4 years we'd been together. If a package arrived, she'd ask if it was another business expense. The tension wasn't constant. That would have been easier. It came in waves, moments of sweetness followed by sharp, precise digs that left me wondering if I'd imagined the warmth in the first place. The people around us noticed, too. My brother pulled me aside during a quick family visit and asked if everything was all right. "You seem on edge," he said. I shrugged it off. Sarah and I were just adjusting, I told him. New chapter. New pressure. But late at night, Lying awake while she scrolled through her phone beside me, I started to wonder if the person who had once been my partner was now just a roommate who didn't like paying rent. Then came the invitations. Her friends wanted to go to wine tastings, weekend getaways, new restaurants that charge more for appetizers than I used to spend on groceries. When I said we couldn't swing it right now, she'd pout or go without me. Sometimes she'd post pictures from those nights, always with captions about treating yourself or knowing your worth. I tried not to read into it, but the subtext was impossible to ignore. The distance between us wasn't loud or obvious. It was quiet. Cold. The kind of distance that doesn't announce itself until one day you realize you're speaking to each other like strangers. And yet, despite everything, I kept working. I told myself the best way to fix it was to succeed. If I could just land one big client, one contract that proved this wasn't a fantasy, maybe things would go back to the way they were. I didn't know it yet, but I was building toward a different kind of breakthrough. Not the kind that saves a relationship, the kind that ends it. By July, the heat had settled over the neighborhood like a heavy blanket. The air shimmered above the asphalt, and the scent of charcoal drifted from one backyard to another. This year, the family barbecue was at my place, an unspoken tradition that I'd inherited when I bought the house. I'd been looking forward to it. Hosting was my element. The morning was a blur of chopping vegetables, rubbing spices into a brisket, and hauling bags of ice to the coolers. Sarah flitted in and out of the kitchen, humming to herself, wearing that bright, sugary mood she pulled out for company. I didn't think much of it. Maybe she was excited for the party. By 2 o'clock, the yard was full, kids darting between lawn chairs, my dad with a beer in hand, my sister setting out trays of potato salad. I was at the grill with my brother, flipping burgers, enjoying the rare sensation of feeling normal. The heat from the coals kissed my face, the smell of sizzling meat rising into the summer air. That's when I felt it, a light pressure between my shoulder blades, quick and deliberate. I glanced back to see Sarah, grinning, pressing a piece of tape flat against my shirt. "Don't move," she said. "It's a surprise." I assumed it was something harmless, like, "Kiss the cook," or, "Master of the grill." Her friends, gathered near the patio, burst into giggles. I shook my head and turned back to the food. For the next hour, I moved through the party with the invisible weight of that sign on my back. I poured lemonade for the kids, handed out plates, accepted claps on the shoulder from uncles. Every so often, I caught someone's eyes dart to my back, their expression tightening before they looked away. It was my 7-year-old nephew who finally broke the illusion. He tugged at my shorts, his face pinched in confusion. "Uncle Tom," he asked, "what does unemployed mean?" The word hung in the air like smoke. My brother stepped in, ripping the sign from my shirt. Cardboard, thick black letters, "Will work for food. Unemployed and desperate. My girlfriend pays for everything." My stomach turned to stone. Before I could process it, my sister appeared with her phone. "You need to see this," she said, her voice low. On her screen was Sarah's latest post, me at the grill, the sign clear as day, captioned, "Putting the new hubby to work. Charity case. LOL. I looked across the yard. Sarah was laughing with her friends, drink in hand, her eyes flicking to mine. She winked. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. The sting of humiliation was there, yes, but it was quickly buried beneath something colder. I didn't storm across the lawn. I didn't demand an apology. I smiled at my family, joked about her sense of humor, and went back to flipping burgers. Because I'd already decided, this was the last barbecue we'd ever host together. She just didn't know it yet. By 6 o'clock, the shadows had lengthened across the yard, stretching over lawn chairs and paper plates. The party was still in full swing, kids shrieking in the pool, my dad laughing at something my brother said. Sarah was holding court near the fire pit, telling some story to her friends, throwing her head back when she laughed. From where I stood at the grill, I could see her glance at me from time to time, searching for the outburst she'd been waiting for all afternoon. It never came. I didn't give her so much as a twitch. Inside, though, the humiliation sat heavy, curling into my ribs. Every word she'd written on that sign felt like a chisel strike against the last bit of trust I'd been clinging to. But rage wasn't going to win me anything. When my sister passed by, I leaned in and told her I had a headache, asked her to keep an eye on things. She nodded without question. At 6:15, I slipped into the house through the back door. The cool air hit my skin, the hum of the refrigerator loud in the sudden quiet. I grabbed my wallet and truck keys from the counter, walked out the side door, and didn't look back. The hotel was 20 minutes away, tucked off a quiet stretch of highway. The clerk barely looked up as I checked in, sliding me a key card without ceremony. The room smelled faintly of bleach and air conditioning, impersonal, perfect. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, staring at the carpet. My heart wasn't pounding anymore. The decision had settled into me like a calm tide. I scrolled to the number of a moving company I'd used years ago. The man who answered, Frank, had a voice like gravel and a way of listening without rushing you. I need a crew, I told him. Tomorrow morning 8 sharp. One person's belongings. No mistakes. We went over the list in careful detail. Clothes, shoes, office contents, boxes in the garage marked with her name. Nothing that was mine. No room for accusations. After we hung up, I turned off my phone and sat in the stillness, replaying the last 4 years like a reel. The small moments I'd brushed off, the little jokes I'd let slide, the way she'd learned to test the line and then cross it without consequence. Somewhere in the middle of those thoughts, I realized I wasn't sad. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was finished. Back at the house, I imagined Sarah laughing with her friends, thinking I was sulking in the spare bedroom, planning some argument she could twist into proof of my instability. She had no idea I wasn't there. No idea that tomorrow, when she woke up, her entire life here would be gone. And no idea that by then, I'd already be on my second cup of coffee, parked just down the street, watching it all begin. The dawn light was thin and pale, stretching across the dashboard of my truck. I sat a block away from the house, coffee cooling in my hand, watching the quiet street like a hunter waiting for the first stir of movement. At exactly 8 o'clock, the moving truck rumbled into view. Big white box, bold blue letters, and Frank climbing out of the cab with the same deliberate pace he'd had on the phone. We shook hands in the driveway. She inside? He asked. Still asleep, I said. The key turned in the front door, and we stepped into the stillness. The air smelled faintly of last night's charcoal. My list was already on the kitchen counter, itemized, precise. Frank's men began their work without a word. They started in the spare room, bubble wrapping her monitor, folding her notebooks into a box marked with her name in black marker. I leaned against the wall in the hallway, listening to the rip of packing tape and the shuffle of footsteps. It took 20 minutes before the first sound came from the bedroom, a rustle, the squeak of the mattress, and then the shuffle of bare feet. She appeared in the hallway wearing one of my old t-shirts, hair tangled, eyes squinting in the light. Her gaze landed on the 2 movers in the living room, carefully wrapping her desk chair. What the hell is going on? Her voice was sharp with sleep and disbelief. They're movers, I said evenly. You're moving out. She laughed once, a brittle, disbelieving sound. Is this about yesterday? Oh my God, you're actually doing this over a joke? It wasn't a joke, I said. It was you telling everyone exactly what you think of me. I'm just agreeing with you. Her mouth opened, ready to fire back, but I held up my phone. On the screen, the photo she'd posted. Me at the grill. The sign. The caption. The laughing emojis from her friends. This, I said quietly, is not what you do to someone you love. Her expression shifted, not to remorse, but to calculation, the look of someone searching for the right lever to pull. Half this stuff is mine. You can't, I can. I cut in. This house was mine before I met you. You haven't paid a cent toward the mortgage or bills. The movers have instructions to pack only what's yours. They'll take it wherever you want within 50 miles. Her breathing quickened. You can't just cut me out. You did that yourself. For the next 2 hours, she drifted between the patio and the couch, making phone calls that all seemed to end badly. Her friends weren't offering a couch. Finally, she called her parents. When the last box was loaded, Frank handed me the clipboard with her new address, Northwood. Her parents. I walked her a small box, toiletries, phone charger, the last of it. This is everything, I said. She sat on the steps, eyes rimmed red. You're really ending 4 years over one mistake? I didn't answer. The truck pulled away. She stayed sitting there, small against the curb, waiting for her ride. I closed the door behind me and realized the silence inside wasn't empty. It was mine. The first thing I noticed when I woke the next morning was the quiet. Not the uneasy silence of a tense house, but something fuller, steadier. It was the absence of her voice in the kitchen, the absence of a television humming in the background. No shoes left by the door. No perfume lingering in the hallway. It felt like walking into a room I'd forgotten I owned. For days, I moved through the house like a man learning its shape again. Every corner had more space. The air seemed lighter. I could leave a coffee mug on the counter without it being a conversation. I could breathe without measuring the sound of it. Word of the barbecue and the morning after traveled fast. Family called first. My mother, worried she'd raised a son who acted in anger. My father, quietly approving. I told them both the same thing: this wasn't revenge. It was self-respect arriving late, but in time. When I showed my mother the photo Sarah had posted, her face went still in a way I'd rarely seen. That was the end of the conversation. Sarah tried to control the story. I saw the vague posts. Some people can't handle strong women, toxic men always show their true colors. But they landed like stones in a dry well. Too many people had seen what happened with their own eyes. The truth didn't need defending. A week later, a lawyer's letter arrived, full of demands, half the furniture, emotional damages, continued payment on her car. My lawyer's reply was short and surgical: deed records, receipts, bank statements, and, at the end, a screenshot of her own captioned cruelty. We never heard from her counsel again. The months that followed were nothing like I'd imagined when I first lost my job. They were better. With no one quietly questioning my choices, I poured myself into the business. 2 major contracts came in back-to-back, the kind that could keep the lights on for years. I hired my first employee, a kid hungry to prove himself, and saw my own ambition reflected in his eyes. 3 months after the barbecue, I lit the grill again. Not for a full family gathering, just a handful of people who'd stood beside me through the storm. My parents, my siblings, a couple of friends. We ate on the back deck, warm evening air curling around us, the hum of conversation easy and unguarded. At one point, my father came to stand beside me at the grill. He didn't say anything at first, just handed me a fresh beer and looked out over the yard. Then he said, "You look lighter. Happier. Like yourself again." I didn't answer right away. I watched the flames lick at the meat, the smoke rise into the fading sky. He was right. I'd been gone for a long time, whittled down to someone who tolerated being less than he was. The day she put that sign on my back, she thought she was writing my worth. She was wrong. All she did was point me toward the door I needed to walk through. And I didn't just walk, I never looked back.